In this part of the video, we're going to be comparing 3 different AI models: ChatGPT o3, Gemini 2.5 Pro, and DeepSeek locally on my computer. They will be competing in this arena with 5 different challenges to see who will win. Who do you think is the best Minecraft builder out of these 3? Comment down below. I also wanted to mention that I put a lot of work in these videos, so a like and sub would be very appreciated. Well, let's go to the video. But there was one more problem though. You see, I obviously want to use the best version of Gemini and the best version of ChatGPT for a fair comparison. But what's the best ChatGPT model? You see, for Gemini was pretty easy. It was just Gemini 2.5 Pro with some more numbers. But for ChatGPT, I always thought was o4 mini high. First of all, it has the number 4, which in my opinion is a pretty big number. Secondly, it has the word high in it, mini high. I mean, it must be good, right? But the thing is, when testing, I discovered something different. Because to me, it seemed like GPT o3 did way better. When I asked both versions for a highly detailed skyscraper, this is what ChatGPT o4 mini high gave me. Just some blank walls. At least it had like a top rim, I guess. But it's pretty minimal. When I broke it open, I saw this inside. Technically there were many floors, but each floor was completely empty with just a bunch of glass. And just to clarify, this is not what Windows should look like. On the other hand, this is what ChatGPT o3 gave me for a highly detailed skyscraper. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but it is definitely an improvement. First of all, it knows how to use glass. Wow. And just like before, there were many floors. With the bottom floor, I guess, being a bit different. Although it doesn't seem to have a fully working door. It would have been correct if this whole floor was moved down a block, and instead of a 3x3 entrance with 2 doors, it either should have chosen 2 doors with a smaller entrance, or just went for a completely new design. Also, I wanted to compare a few more structures. Here is a boat of ChatGPT o4, and here is a boat of ChatGPT o3. Then I asked for a realistic boat with a dock, and this is ChatGPT o4 mini high. And here is ChatGPT's o3 boat, which even though I asked for a medium boat, this more looks like a bigger boat to me. And even though this is not exactly what I meant, it's still pretty good. I mean, there isn't much inside, but at least the windows make sense. So even though it looked like o3 was clearly the best choice, there was also another version, ChatGPT 4.5, which when asked for a building did actually a pretty decent job. I mean, there aren't any floors, unless you count these random blocks as floors. But the building itself... Wait. This is all glass? Huh, I didn't know that. Well, before I discovered that, the building itself actually looked pretty cool. Although I think that was just a lucky guess, because when I asked for a boat, it gave this. Like, what even is this? But I feel like if you saw this in the ocean, you would have assumed it's a boat that all the way broke down, probably went in flames at some point, and now it's just some floating planks. I don't know, man. I think we all know what to do. So yeah, I went for GPT o3. Anyways, let's now compare the different AIs. Also, just a reminder that DeepSeek will be specifically locally run on my computer, so then we can see if local AIs have a chance of competing to some actual more powerful AIs. For reference, I'm using this model on a 4070 Super. Pretty curious what's gonna happen. Right, so the first build of the AI build battle is gonna be a medium class house, which after a quick Google search looks something like this. So let's see how they will do. Right, so first with ChatGPT, it generated this. It's pretty okay looking, and it definitely has a functioning door with windows that make sense. It even has a second story, although there's no way to get there. But overall, it's pretty nice. I'm also not sure about this, because it seems like it wanted to make a chimney, although the chimney goes to the second story, which doesn't make that much sense. Overall, I'll rate it a 7 out of 10. Let's now compare it to Gemini. So Gemini gave me this, which at first glance may look like an improvement, and I would say it is, although currently I have it set up that rotations of blocks they ignore, because they keep messing up. But the AI clearly meant to change the direction of the stairs like this. I think it's pretty obvious. but for now I'll keep it like this because it's the original. Inside the house, the door is kinda blocking the ground, and so is everything else, from this furniture to this chest and even the bookshelves. And even if these stairs are pointed the correct way, it still wouldn't make sense because there's a chimney on top. But after some more thinking, I actually think I'll rate this a 7 out of 10 and then change that one down to a 6 out of 10. Just because at least this one had furniture, this one didn't. So here are the new scores. And now let's try to ask DeepSeek, which is locally run on my computer. You see, I'm actually really surprised at how well this is made. And I think this third one is the best out of them all. You see, this is what DeepSeek generated locally on my computer. It clearly went for a more modern and open air design. The airflow is pretty great, unless the wind comes from one of these directions. Anyways, it's also more modern and actually a bit stronger than the old houses. You see, I think this is meant to be the door. And if we enter, there are some more stone blocks. And actually, these stone blocks were before in the code called small block, which isn't the block, so I did have to replace it with stone. But I still feel it brings across the same message about teamwork and house. Anyways, I'm rating it a 9 out of 1,000. So yeah, for the first one, it definitely was Gemini who won. Although in my opinion, ChatGPT still gave a decent result. But let's hop on to the next challenge. For the next build, I asked them for a CyberPunk Skyscraper. And like I didn't have enough disappointment yet, this was probably the worst one out of them all. Gemini still gave a pretty cool result, but DeepSeek locally wasn't able to generate anything that was logically making sense. And ChatGPT's one I just really don't like. I wonder if the problem had to do with specifically mentioning the maximum size they can use. But in any case, here they are. So ChatGPT is definitely getting a 4 out of 10. It's just really basic and this random pillar on top. Just no. Gemini still did pretty well. There's nothing in the inside, it's just full of blocks. But it doesn't matter, the outside still looks okay. And it even has some platforms, which is nice. The thing is, I've seen Gemini make way better CyberPunk skyscrapers than this. This is still pretty cool, but if I can find some footage of a different one, then I'll have it on screen right now. Which I remember one being way better than this, so yeah. Also, for some reason with this specific thing, DeepSeek couldn't generate anything that made sense at all. It was just the complete nonsense of non-Minecraft things or something. It just couldn't generate it. Probably had to do with it being locally run, but that's just part of the challenge. But I did have Gemini interpret what DeepSeek meant, and this is the result of that. We can clearly see that it tried something. Iron blocks and redstone are nice, and there is definitely something going on. But it's definitely still way too random, and it again more just made some wall, it seems like, just like how it did earlier. Anyways, I think it's pretty clear this is not gonna do well at all, so I just crossed it out. So it's kinda more chance between these two now. For the next dance, I wanted something a bit different, so I asked them for a fruit bowl. So here is ChatGPT's fruit bowl. Either these are space fruits, or ChatGPT messed up by thinking this was laying on top of the edge over here. So yeah, to me it just seems like it confused the fruits with like the side of the fruit bowl instead of the actual bottom, which is actually something way more common with buildings. You see the building from earlier also had this thing on top, which is some kind of pole, but it also started on the height of the edge of the building, of like the outer rim. So I guess that's what happened here. Also, for the first time, Gemini made the smallest creation out of these two, although it is a lot more detailed. I mean, to be honest, if we're just looking at the fruit itself, I think ChatGPT's one makes a bit more sense, because Gemini's one was just way more randomness. Like, what is this yellow stuff? When I think of yellow, I think of like a banana or something, but this is just like more random. I mean, you possibly could say this magenta and purple stuff are some kind of grapes, but yeah, it's just a bit too random. But yeah, pretty interesting attempt. Also, like before, I had Gemini interpret what DeepSeek meant. Although DeepSeek generated this, it did generate a new like area to build on. But the football itself is like kind of more under the layer, and it's just a bunch of layered colors. So yeah. But it did generate one too big and won't actually fit. But on its own it just failed. I do think Gemini won here, but let's go to the next challenge, which is a fan. More specifically, I meant one of those fans you can put on your desk and stuff. So let's see what the AI's made. Oh, and by the way, I'm just completely giving up on DeepSeek, specifically locally. So here are the two structures generated by ChatGPT and Gemini. The thing is, these were so disappointing to me that I just regenerated them. First of all, ChatGPT's one is, I guess, is okay, except for that the fan doesn't look like how I expected. At least it has a stand, which also makes sense. Gemini's one, of course, also had a stand, but the fan blade, which doesn't look like a fan blade, sticks like below the actual plate the fan is sitting on. It does have a nice beefy wire, I guess. Not sure if a fan needs 600 watts of energy. Although I'm not complaining about the wire, I don't really care about the wire. But yeah, these were just too disappointing. Although I don't think one of them is better than the other, since ChatGPT's one looks like one of those you can just rotate all around. And Gemini's one at least looks more close like a fan, I guess. Whereas the ChatGPT's one, in my opinion, doesn't. So after I mentioned they should make a better one, but also a bit bigger this time, this is what they look like. I'm not sure about ChatGPT's one, I just don't know exactly what. And Gemini's one is making more sense this time. Although to be honest, I was still kind of disappointed. Also interesting to make the same mistake of it having the fan blades be lower than the actual platform it's standing on. Anyways, on to the next creation. So next I asked them for a castle. But at first both AIs generated the castle too big. GPT's original one was this, which had a somewhat functioning door with some areas inside, which is nice, I guess. And also a more indoor place, but it's just kind of blocked off. And there are no lights. And there are multiple floors, it's just that he didn't add any lights and any way to get here. So it's not amazing, but at least it's just okay, you know. Gemini's one is a bit bigger, except for that it's missing walls. And also it's just a bit weird. I don't know what it meant to do here. There are some hallways and some random things. Although it's like stuck indoors. Oh, this I guess should be like an entrance. But it's just kind of glitched, I guess. And I think it just gave up on the last part. And the roof is also a bit weird. It's fine. I would say in this situation Gemini's one is worse, because if you really want a castle, at least ChatGPT's one makes more sense. As long as you add some stairs and probably place a few more blocks to actually block off the entrance, instead of whatever this is, which doesn't even have all 4 walls. So then I asked them to put it in a maximum of a 28 by 28 square, and this is what the result was. Although Gemini kinda did cheat with claiming extra space. But if we look at the overall generation, ChatGPT's one is more open, with a safe area inside, easily accessible, with a center structure, sadly with no stairs, but at least there are windows for light this time, and this top room with a lamp or something. And then we reach the top with some broken flag, it seems like. Gemini's one doesn't actually have an entrance, but if we break in through the front, we'll see some random fences. And if we break in further, we actually get to this area, which has a fully blocked off space around the central pillar, with doors leading to a big open area with no floors at all. Although I did notice a random mossy cobblestone brick block. Actually 2 of them. Oh wait, 3. Oh, there's another cracked brick block. Actually, these floating blocks seem to be everywhere. Anyways, the roof is actually okay, and that's nice. There's even a lighting rod. But yeah, that was the last challenge out of all 5. I do think I've seen way better things the AIs made. Although these weren't cherry-picked results, these were just the first results the AIs gave me. Although if you want to use this in a real situation, then it's probably smart to ask them multiple times and then to pick the best result out of all the options. So now that we have seen the AIs compete, which one should you use? Well, it's pretty safe to say that locally wouldn't be a good idea, even with a 4070 Super. So I guess you would need like a NASA per C or something, I don't know. But out of ChatGPT 03, and Gemini 2.5 Pro, I think we can actually conclude the result from the first build. You see, ChatGPT's one is still nice. It makes sense, and there aren't too many weird things going on, except for this chimney I guess, which should have probably went a bit higher. But like, there's nothing too wrong with it. Like, it's just a house, you know? And we can see Gemini clearly trying to get a step ahead. Instead of a flat roof, it shows a more complex roof. It shows a bigger chimney. It added something in front of the door. It added furniture and a staircase. And all of this is very nice and definitely a step up from ChatGPT's house. The thing is, while everything seems good in theory, in practice it's a bit different. Because all the furniture is in the ground. The stairway wouldn't make sense because the chimney is literally placed on top. In front of the house it's actually too thick of blocks here, which looks a bit weird. And the chimney itself also is kinda weird with the campfire being on one of the corners. And there are many more things to point out, but I feel like this still summarizes it a bit. And yes, ChatGPT also makes mistakes. Of course it does. But I still feel like Gemini tries to do a bit more while being a bit buggier. Instead of making sure what the AI does have at least makes more sense. But if you really want me to tell you an answer, I would say that you should choose Gemini. You will probably encounter more bugs in the code and have to fix more things, and there might be more annoyances that you will experience, but the end product will still be better. It's definitely true that with Gemini, you can definitely make better Minecraft builds, so I highly recommend that option. I'm not saying that with ChatGPT you will get a lot worse results. The difference probably also has to do with the prompting you give it, because my main prompt for the structure generation is probably a bit biased towards Gemini, since I had to adjust it a lot because Gemini couldn't understand what I was trying to do. So on the back end, I still feel like ChatGPT was a bit easier and understood more of what I wanted. But my point still stands, and Gemini is definitely better.